I like everything about them. I like the characters. I like the lighting style, the fighting, of course. I remember the first time I saw Keanu flick a cartridge out of a pistol. I was like, oh my God, rewind. And it was just super cool. Yeah, everything about them are cool. They're fun, they're sexy, they're badass. They're, you just watch them over and over and over again. I'm shooting a television show in France right now, and I was like, guys, it's John Wick, you gotta let me go. And they're like, okay, it's John Wick, you can go. But everybody there's been texting me, how's it going? Everyone's super jealous. Good, let them be jealous. And excited for me as well. But yeah, when they first approached me, first thing I said was, absolutely, it's happening. You guys are gonna let me off this TV show. But everybody's just really excited for me, and I'm excited for me. It's John Wick, you know what I'm saying? It's the best. You go in and you meet them all, and they sort of explain the scene that you're gonna do, and then they take you through like a 45-minute exercise regime. You feel very safe with them. You feel very, very safe with the weapons guys. They're very communicative with shouting out how many rounds, what's gonna explode behind your head, because like you watch the movies and it looks like just somebody pushes a button and the whole room explodes. But every little squib, every little piece of marble that gets shattered off the wall is perfectly calculated, where you feel very safe going into it. First off, she's really good at memorizing fights. She's really good at mathematically putting them all down, and then she's a really good actress as well. She's very smart. She's fun to work with. She's got a great attitude. She's always smiling. She's always ready to go. Yeah, it's kind of a great team here. Len's great. He's easy to communicate with. He knows what he wants. Little things too, I like that he comes up with. Just little minute things that sort of make or break a reaction or a timing thing. He's got really clear ideas and really good ideas, and he works on the fly like that, which I love. Well, I mean, he's obviously a good father. I like that he's a little rough, I think the juxtaposition of, I stick knives in people, and also I'm like getting my toenails painted by a little bit. I think that makes for a good story. I love what Keanu does. He speaks very slowly, and he means what he says. And if you ask him a question, he'll answer in the fewest words possible. I think they'll really like this movie because it's got all the stuff that John Wick has usually, and then some more, and then it has all the people in it, but then it comes from her point of view, Ana's point of view.
When I read the script, I was really, I didn't think you could find a way to expand the world in a way that felt completely different and at the same time completely connected, but they did. And the thing that it's interesting, I was talking to Len, the director, tonight, and I asked him, are you a big fan of classics, particularly Shakespeare, because it feels very Shakespearean, because it deals with the bounds, individuals trying to assert their individuality within the bounds of cultural restrictions. But this takes it to the level of family. So it made me think of Lear and Hamlet, all that stuff. And the action, even though the story is incredibly cohesive and exciting, the action's off the hook. The only action I've ever seen her do was James Bond. And as a matter of fact, that was the first time I'd ever seen her. And this role requires such, it just seems like once she gets going, pretty much 2/3 of the movie is just her fighting and running for her life, and killing 20 people at a time. There's so much pathos to the character, so it requires such a deep and nuanced level of acting. And so because I think she's capable of doing both, I think it's really gonna be exciting to see her do this. The word that comes to my mind, well, two words that come to my mind are suave and smooth. When people try to act at it, it looks cheesy. But Ian just seems to be able to be it. People that love the John Wick films are going to love seeing not only the world expanded upon, but specifically seeing the world of the Ruska Roma come to life. And then there's the notion that you could take a mythology that is so unique and expand it with almost a complete other mythology is really exciting, and I think people will love that. And then everybody's going to get to see all the great John Wick action. I mean, this role is so different because even when I do comedy, usually I'm playing authoritative figures that talk a lot. So one of the things that was so exciting for me about playing this role in the first place was that he was so different from anyone I'd ever played before. So you can't really play, you can't really effectively play an archetype. You can only play a character. But kind of standing from the outside, I realized that one of the great things about Sharon, watching his growth through the films, is that you go from seeing him as a character of mystery to a character of heart. I really believe that if John Wick is the soul of these movies, Sharon is the heart.
The character has a certain amount of mystery to him. You're not quite sure what universe he actually operates in. He's also extremely manipulative, and he's a leader. I don't want to make comparisons with cult leaders, but I think somebody who uses power to influence people's minds. It's meant to be a realistic interpretation of a cult leader. It's not meant to be that. But the inferences are there, and there's no doubt that an audience will pick up on that. The challenge, I think, with a role like this is to not turn it into a kind of a stereotypical villain, because the tone of the film is, although it has a core of realism to it, there's also a hyper-realism too, which I think that people unconsciously understand. They get it. They understand it's not real, but at the same time, they're drawn into a reality, a compelling reality. And a great deal of that has to do with the action, the choreography of the action, which is almost, at times, balletic. I suppose the thing that impressed me the most was that my nephews and nieces loved this franchise. And when I said, I might be doing something in it, they jumped up and down, because normally the kind of pictures in theater I do, they're not jumping up and down with excitement to see them, but for some reason they love this whole world. So being part of it, being in the vicinity of this franchise has upped my cool quotient immeasurably. What I said about female action stars. Ana is from Cuba, Catalina is from Colombia. I don't think that would have happened 10 years ago. And it's part, again, of the movement towards giving what up to now, to a great extent, were minority voices in the storytelling, giving them the spotlight.
Winston is one of those people that, in the universe, that's why, you talk all the time, about, who is he? He's part of the table, he's not part of the table. Is he part of Ruska Roma? Why is he still there? Why is he still alive? My character is a grounding effect, if you like. Winston Conley comes in, he's rather pithy, you don't know who he is, this sort of creature, if you like, I said the one thing about Winston is you should be able to eat off his head. He's so immaculately and he's so detached in a sense, but at the same time within it, but gives nothing away. It's like in this one, when, with Ana, which is lovely. It's important that when we rehearsed it and we did it, that he gives nothing away. It's been such a sort of an interesting journey for the whole, that it started off as this independent movie, which was, and obviously, a lot of us who did the part saw that what a good script it was, the original script. You had Willem Dafoe, you had Nyquist, Michael, which sadly died. I mean, Jesus, that was a shock, after we did the first one. But, and how it expanded to number 2, which broadened the world, and then number 3. And then number 4. One of the things I like about the show too is the kind of the humor that's brought into it. The fact that it's a sort of that John Wick is like they're all fanboys of him in the assassin universe. That Wick is the sort of the Baba Yaga, the unbeatable, the guy from hell, the guy that they cannot kill. I mean, I thought Mark was marvelous in John Wick 3 when he says, "Oh, John Wick, I'm fighting," and he dies. "It's been a pleasure to fight you. It's been a pleasure to die." But that also gives it, lets the audience in on it. It doesn't take itself. It takes itself seriously within the universe, but it knows the audience. It gives them what they want. She's delightful to work with. Obviously, she's got a reputation and prestige, and they wanted her for this. They wanted her very much. She's the right age, the right look. And apparently she fights very well. It's because of his sincerity as a human being and because of his love of the character. I think it's important that he came back again. Oh, yeah. Because if it's a reference to John Wick, also, I said, you and Chad, so you better make sure that it follows in the tradition. Be there for a while, set the tone. So that's why he came out early. I mean, we're only in, the 4th week of production? But they've had us all in here. So, I mean, you've had John, you've had John Wick, you've had Keanu, and then you've got me doing my bit now, and then Anjelica will be coming in. So it sort of sets the tone for the rest of the movie, which I think is a good thing, and I think Anna appreciates that as well. Sometimes, sometimes I talk to Shay, who's written the last couple, Hutton, and we haven't met, but I have an understanding that he overwrites Winston to sort of like he's an English. I said, it's sort of Oscar Wilde. I said, and he said, "I trust you'll pare it down and you'll make it." I said, "Yeah, exactly." So I think Winston is he's an observer of human nature. He's a pithy observer. He comes out with the bummo, but he only says enough. No more, otherwise he doesn't give anything away, which is why he's still survived, which is why he's still here,
One of the things that I really liked about the script was that it was kind of the opposite of like John Wick's story, in the sense that John Wick is trying to get out. This was a story about a person that was deciding and wanting to get in and become an assassin. So that fascinated me because we've seen different iterations of the assassin who's either already a legend or trying to get out. John Wick being one of the best of that, in my opinion. But not very often do you get to see somebody who wants in. And what does that mean about that person? Like, what makes a person decide, you know what, I think I should become an assassin? And what mentally is going on there to get to that point? Twofold with Eve, because it has vengeance in it, but it's also a connection to her father in terms of a surrogate family. She no longer has a family, and so there's the want of family. It's also a connection with where her father, trained. So it's one place feels like maybe this could be a second home, but also I really am pained and want revenge for what happened. This film, you're able to see kind of taking a peek behind the curtain of how the Ruska Roma operates, because again, we have Eve coming into it from the beginning. And seeing how one is trained to become an assassin. So what Eve goes through, you can kind of imagine that through her journey in Ruska Roma, that this is possibly what John Wick would have had to go through in some of his training. So it kind of gives you a window into the possibility of what he might have gone through in his journey for that. John Wick and Eve, they both suffered loss. And so there's a commonality there. They cross paths hardcore. John Wick is on his way out of all the ramifications and consequences that he's been through. And Eve is just beginning to go down that road. So there's understanding, but also a warning of, advice I don't want to say bigger brother, but in terms of real life, of a bigger brother's been through it and says, just understand what you're getting yourself into if you go down this path. The thing that was absolutely wonderful about Ana within the training, because it's a lot of work. It's so brutal. You're a character that's beginning this path. You're becoming an assassin. So you're also going to get your ass kicked. You're going to get thrashed. And she's like, cool, okay, cool, I'm in. And like we'd on set, it would be, she'd show up, show me the bruises, the marks, the scars, and they became like merit badges. She's like, I'm like, this is what it is. And the thing that she is wonderful at, and I think a lot of people don't really think about this too often, of you can really have the choreography down, have perfect choreography, but if it feels like you are remembering it and even doing a brilliant job, a lot of times the acting is secondary to remembering the choreography, and she is acting all through that, which is, for a director, amazing.
Shay had been a big fan of the original 2 John Wicks, and had written this script about an assassin cult that lived in Switzerland, and a little bit of a revenge story with this lead female character. And it was kind of funny, I think, because I think it was Thunder Road, Basil, who was reading it as I'm shooting John Wick 3. And it was all about ballerinas and all this kind of little ballerina box. And I was big into ballet at the time. I was trying to put a ballerina sequence into John Wick 3, which is part of the Ruska Roma, where John Wick comes from. And they thought, oh, that's kind of coincidental, that kind of fit. And I think their heads went spinning, wow, this could be, it felt of the world. I think, it's always tricky to do John Wick without John Wick, or John Wick adjacent, or however you want to put it. But I think one of the fascinating things in the franchise to me is kind of the world creation. Mm-hmm. Like we always say, I'm a big fan of Greek mythology and Tolkien and all kinds of fantasy-esque worlds like that. So to build your own world and take it, and in the features of John Wick, we have that 2 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes sometimes, to explore the worlds. And it's usually, very John Wick centric. We're always with the characters, so we don't really have time to explore all the worlds, which is why TV and an anime are always exciting. But also the ancillary features, like Ballerina, give us a chance to explore that world. Is it something people want to see? I think so. Can we make the characters exciting and stuff? I think so. They're intrinsically going to be different than John Wick. Mm. I think if we just tried copying the same story of our protagonist, it would get redundant or feel a little bit out. But trying to give each of our leads a different story arc, I think, is what we're hoping for. Eve's just getting off in her, or just starting off in her career, so she's a little bit newer. She makes mistakes, she corrects. Emotionally, she's seeing a lot of this stuff for the first time. It's like her foray into the Wick world. And I think that's the fun part. You get to see her evolve in it and not just be a badass. You get to see her become a badass. The protagonist comes from that background of a father-daughter story of an orphan child in a ballet school that's trying to find her way, and how she deals with another orphan or another child that needs help. We kind of put, I guess, more empathy into John, both from the audience's point of view and John's point of view. But if you go back to the first film, he's a force to be reckoned with. He is a little bit of the boogeyman. So it's nice to see that from a different perspective. And again, that's another, that was one of the benefits of Ballerina and the perspective in which they did it in, is you got to see John Wick in the perspective of the first movie, which is, okay, a little bit more antagonist than protagonist. I think Sharon was a really great addition as Nogi. I love seeing Anjelica Huston back, Ian McShane, Lance Reddick. Really big fan of Rob that came in and helped us out from Germany. I think he's got a great stare. He's a great bad guy. Really enjoyed Daniel Bernhardt again. And, Gabriel Byrne is come on. he's amazing. Ana, of course, is the biggest new welcome in. There's all different kinds of choreography in martial arts, it's tone. Do you want a wuxia film with a fantasy film in China, like a Crouching Tiger? Do you want wire work everywhere? Do you want that hyper real aesthetic? Do you want? I mean, you know, we're already pushing it pretty good, where one person can shoot 100 people. I mean, I think we're pretty, yeah, we're pretty fantasy already. But like, we want to keep it, or the vibe that was always the intent of John Wick was, we want the characters in the movie to believe it's real.
Yeah.
What the audience sees is a hyper real world, which is hopefully a little bit more fun, more of a grounded type anime situation than fantasy-esque or superpowers or a superhero movie. I think a lot of action movies are meant to be that. It's meant to be a ride. And sometimes you're vibing on the film, sometimes you're vibing on the response of the crowd, and I think that's really important. So like, I don't think Ballerina the Wicks were made exclusively for theaters, but they were made with a theatrical, they're meant to get everybody going, oh yeah, here we go, this is it, he's gonna shoot everybody now. Or, oh my God, they killed this puppy, you know. There's a cool moment when you're watching it with an audience and you hear everybody go silent, like, oh, okay, that's the oh. You know, that's where, you know, everybody's behind the character. And when, you know, as John Wick buries his puppy, we knew the audience goes silent and nobody talked. And either that's really good or really bad. And then the first time he unwinds on people, you know, place goes nuts. And like, that's a great experience. So hopefully there's enough interesting action and some interesting, you know, get behind the lead character moments in Ballerina that make you want to ride that wave. You know, it was done on a big format with the right colors, and I think with the music, and I think it's meant to be seen in a theater. But I think the biggest part is like, you know, action is meant to be seen, you know, and go on that ride with everybody. Nobody wants to ride the roller coaster alone, you know.
I mean, just watching a John Wick movie, it's incredible, the world that they build around John Wick. And when I read the script, for me it was very interesting to find that there is a town where the assassins live. And it's okay to be an assassin, and they teach children how to be an assassin. And they are, you know, they're who they are, and it's okay. The whole action sequence, I've never been in an action movie doing action scenes. That was interesting. I mean, like, you just have to be open to experiences, new experiences in your life, and this is one of them. My training has been for about 2 weeks, and it's like the fast lane. So how to hold a gun, because, you know, I've never done a movie where I have to deal with guns. So basics, you know, this is a gun. You hold it like this. If it's a rifle, then you hold it a different way. You know, stunts, they're ninjas. I mean, these people can fly they can do anything. And it's actually incredible to see what they can do. So I'm just open mind, watching what they do, what they can teach me, and yeah, trying to like soak everything in. She's the right hand of the Chancellor. Because she didn't grow up with a father, I think the Chancellor is kind of like a father figure for her, and needs a lot of respect and, you know, love towards him. And she is this very determined, cold-blooded woman that is just doing her job. Gabriel is just, he has such a beautiful presence. And he is, you know, he's kind of like those actors that everything's gonna be okay. Like, his energy is like very calm and cool and collected, and he knows what he's doing, and it's a joy to be around him, actually. It's great. I think she's a great actress. I think she's a fantastic actress, and I think she can definitely do justice to the name of, you know, Wick. I think she's gonna be great. I feed from people's energy, so his energy is very, you know, calm and collected. You never see him, even if everything goes wrong, you never see him despair. So I think that's what we need. We need a captain that is cool-headed and he knows where he's guiding the boat, and I think that's what he's doing. It's a lot of stuff, especially with this big action sequence. You know, he just needs to be all there, and he's there all the time. I mean, like, he comes in and he gives you a little note, and then he goes back, and it's great.
I was nervous, I was anxious, I had butterflies. I come from a very athletic background, so when I get the opportunity to sort of have that feeling of preparation before having a game, I try to search for that in a lot of facets. So when he said, you know, we're gonna beat you up, we're gonna train you, we're gonna show you how to, you know, how to learn how to use guns and fighting and specific styles for the character. I mean, I was just ready to fly to Budapest as soon as I got that information. I was like, I need to go now. It was a dream come true. I love the immersion of it. I love being able to sort of learn new skills and apply them and, you know, train for 2-3 months for a 30-second clip. I'd never be able to pull it off if I didn't have that, you know, those weeks of training or those months of training. It took a great team to learn. I mean, with Jeremy and Jackson, who were sort of the fight and, you know, fight coordinators on you know, in Budapest at the action gym. It was, I took it as a badge of honor to be able to sort of coexist with these stunt people, the stunt community, and to be able to, you know, say, hey, I can try. I'm not sure if I can do it, but I can try. And I think there was one moment where Jeremy Minas, who said at a certain point I had to do a role, and I was feeling sort of very down. I was doubting myself, and obviously because I was comparing myself to the stunt guys. But Jeremy was like, comes up and he's like, you can do it. Come on. And just that little bit of a bump made me sort of be like, okay, great. I got a great team behind trying to like make this look as effortless and as real as possible. We had rehearsed all these fights, and then, you know, they keep evolving day to day, and then you get to set, and then you know all the dances, or at least you've learned them ahead of time, and you show up, and then they throw the smoke at you, and you can't see nothing. Nothing. You can't see. You're talking about like having to disarm a man and having another guy coming at you with an axe. And when you're dancing on the stage without the smoke, it's easy. And then you put the smoke in, and you're really in that space now. You're in that space of trying to survive. And so yeah, that was it. I think the most exciting thing was just being a part of something that I've seen for like the last 10 years. That made me excited about action films again. It was something that I think for a while they sort of died down. I mean, growing up, I was a massive fan of like Van Damme and Bruce Willis, and even the earlier films of Seagal. That just to have like a little like a stripe in that sort of linear stories of great action films. I was like, that's good. You know, my dad gets to see it, my uncles get to see it. You know, my cousins get to see it, and they are massive action buffs. One big thing was that he was a protector, so he doesn't kill, you know? So that influenced a lot of the fighting, which was nothing was a kill shot. Everything was to disarm, disable, and move forward. And so that was so helpful to understand. He very much is living in an island, I mean, figuratively and metaphorically, with him and his daughter. And I think the fear of trying to maintain young Eve's world as safe and as protective as possible, while knowing that eventually the truth is going to come out about who she is and what world she lives in. And so that, I think that mask that he carries with him, you know, about everything is good, and then immediately gets turned upside down when, you know, when they come after her, or come after both of them. It's a you know, fight or flight moment, you know, and obviously he goes into somewhat of an autopilot to protect his daughter. But it is, I think as a parent, it's just a lot more pressure to make sure that your child is safe from a world that eventually is going to come and get them. Well, I feel like Javier's, in terms of the Chancellor and the sort of the community that Chancellor sort of runs, I think he feels duped. You know, I think for so long he was brainwashed into believing something. His man was sort of an imposter in a way that would use other people as resources for his own benefit. And only until he decided to break away from sort of that community was sort of, I think, the stamp between this person that he looked up to, and now it becomes a false prophet. The action. I mean, the action, I think, but also you know, what made, I think, John Wick so special was that it was based on a very simple premise, which is the longing of a spouse through a dog that ends up getting sort of killed in a very shameless crime, and that sort of sparked this entire thing. And so I kind of hope that when people see this film, that obviously they go to enjoy the action, but at the end, maybe they do remember a little bit about someone they love, and the dreams or the nightmares of what they're capable of doing if something happened to any of them, you know, and sort of living vicariously through Eve's character of what they would do, you know, because when I've seen great films, if something happens to a loved one, I come out like wanting to like see how they're doing, you know. I want to check on my sister, see how she's doing, you know. So that's what I hope for.
It was this fascinating world. It was an interesting offshoot from a world that already exists, and just feeling really respectful about where it all started, and the beautiful world of John Wick, the crazy world of John Wick, and how there's an opportunity there to spring off from that and create something that's an offshoot of that. I found that John Wick is very stylish and extremely clever. Is really the best way I could describe it. So I was really attracted to that. The idea of doing an offshoot and using the inspiration from that was really exciting. The main beginning for Ballerina, the clothes were from the off-start, it was all about tailoring. So we started off with the tailored pieces and just made sure they were really good cuts. Ana's coat matches her eyes, little details like this, putting beauty in that tailoring, but also making it so that people can move and do all this action. The stunt crew were a really big part of this. I deferred to them a lot of the time with the movements and sort of built the clothes around what their requirements were. There were a lot of boxes to tick along the way, and technically it was really interesting as well. We tried a suit, we tried a tie at one point. We did experiment, but then she put the coat on and it fitted perfectly, and she was like, this is it, this is the one, I love it. And we all loved it. As I said, it matched her eyes, it felt right. She wore a fantastic bodysuit that was flexible, and then there was another suit that we put together for her and tailored it to her specifically, and that was for the Continental. So everything just fell into place. It was thrilling to be able to create a John Wick suit because it's iconic, and Keanu was like, yeah, look, it's just another version, right? And to me, it was so much more than that because I brought in one of my favorite tailors and we worked together on it and chose the most beautiful wool and made sure his trousers were flexible. We had extra pairs for all his stunts, but John Wick's a proper hero, and for me, it was like, I don't know, building a Batman costume. So I loved it. The style of Ballerina is tailored, slick, sharp, expensive, and crazy but glamorous. Anjelica is such a special person, and it was really magical to work with her in particular because there was so much scope in actually creating robes from the start, from scratch. You know, building fabrics in with tassels and really building up that look that was already created from previous designers, and then building up on that. She loved it. She loved to really have this eclectic feel about her. We discussed a lot about what her past was and where she collected all these rings and all these jewelry and these robes and all these people that might cross her path. So she was a really eclectic, interesting character. Really fun to have sort of Ana come from this world of like, we saw her vulnerable and then she builds and builds and builds, and then we sort of built that confidence into her costume with her shoulders and the tailoring, and so she starts in the comfortable linens and the ballerina costume, and then slowly she's building, and then there's that break, and all of a sudden she's slick. Len's outlook is very, very cool, and it was fun to just be able to present and choose together and build a color palette together exactly. And Len has a really tight vision, And so it became easy to follow. Once we got rolling, you know what this person likes, and you know how it's going to look, and then there's this trust that builds, and then you just know how to deliver that.
When I first read the script, I was like, this is a really interesting take on the John Wick world, having it told from a female perspective, and to have so many leading female characters who are strong, back to back with each other on screen. I thought, well, that's going to be really interesting to see, especially the relationship with Nogi and Eve. I thought, well, I've seen this so many times with men, but not so many times with the women. So I was like, let's get into that, definitely. And I was up for it, of course, because of the cast. There are so many people within it. Anjelica, Huston, McShane, Ana. It's a no-brainer, really, I had to say yes. It has always been a dream of mine to be in a role where it's something connected to the underworld, underground, and assassins. So for me, it's like, we've only seen that a couple of times, and in this story we get to see her backstory, but also how she is challenged by wanting to do the right thing with regards to everybody, her future, with regards to the Ruska Roma. So it's a slightly different take on the assassin with their movement forward by doing the right thing, as opposed to sticking with the gang and honor. I think because Nogi meets Eve at such a young age, her first perception of Eve is that she's this strong, determined survivor who has, in a way like Nogi, come from a world where she cannot be anymore. And so there is an understanding of being left on your own, an orphan, and then becoming, in your own strength, your own entity. And I believe as they grow, the relationship does strengthen, and there's a slight maternal connection, but it is always about pushing forward and finding her own voice and her own character and her own identity. To know you're coming on a John Wick franchise is one of the most exciting things for me because of the stunts. And as soon as I was told that they had me on board, I was like, do I get to do any stunts? Do I get to fire any guns? And of course they have you on board. Yeah, I've got a whole orientation with the guns, the hand rifles. They've had me with the stunt teams doing some martial arts here and there, some fights, some punches. But one of the beautiful things of that is it's sort of like a nice way of being welcomed into the Ballerina family, and knowing that we all have a language that is unified, and that we can, even if we're just standing there, we've actually in some way lived that part of the induction. It's interesting. I've fired many handguns before. I fired rifles, but the specificity, the strict regimen of this team here, it's like, this is how you hold a gun. This is how you take out the barrel. This is how you load bullets. It's been much more detailed. And I think the reason they do that is because they have a fan base that strongly know and understand the world of martial arts, of weaponry. So everybody is looking with a fine-tooth comb and a microscope to see, that the truth is there, that it looks real, that it is believable. And so, that's part of what makes this so special. Everybody knows what they're doing. It's not just mimicry, I think the audience are really gonna take to Eve, to Ana. I've seen some footage of the film so far, and she's incredible. She's absolutely incredible, and it's lovely to know that there is a kick-ass energy coming out of this fine performance. She's outstanding, and I think they will take to her, and hopefully it will be just the beginning for her story and her journey.
When I first read the script, I was instantly drawn to the story because it is obviously an action movie, but it also shows the relationship between father and daughter. And I love my family. My family is everything, so I love the story even more. And this is Eve's journey to her revenge. And the club fight scene where Kayla appears is first down moment for her, where she gets that herself as an assassin. So I thought this character and this scene is really, really crucial for her journey. I thought, just like anybody else, she was very much looking forward to a great night ahead. I had to give her few settings to help myself better dive into the role. I imagined that this is Caitlin's birthday, and in terms of her professional career, I had imagined that this is very close to a moment where her dreams finally coming true. Basically, there's a lot of things to celebrate this day. She thought there would only be success and happy moments in her life from then on. Creating this backstory helped me to express her fear and desire to survive and complexity of her feelings. She's such a nice person. I mean, she made sure that I feel I'm part of this team. And what I love about her as an actor is she's just so absorbed in her character at all moments. That I could tell that from her previous film. Meeting with the stunt team was my one of the things that I was really excited about, because when will I ever get to the chance to learn from them, you know? So when I worked another production, I was only learned some punches or kicks, basically some attacks. So I didn't learn the reaction, but this stunt team taught me how to respond punches or how to get gunshot or like some slide. It was only reaction, but I thought it was how lucky I am.
I have 3 sons who love the John Wick films, and I'm a fan myself. And when I got the call about Ballerina, my boy said, "You have to do it." So I read the script, took the initial call with Len, and we got on very well. We share a very similar aesthetic. So when you've got a person like that in your camp, it makes it so much easier, and you can push the film so much further. So I've had a really great experience working with Len and Roman and the team. The important thing was, yes, it has to fit within the John Wick world. It needs to feel like a John Wick film, but it needs to have its own vibe. It's a case of us putting our own spin on it, and we had a script that had very different settings, which helped us immediately. We're set in Europe, so we with snow, so color temperature changes immediately. The tonality and materials were into stone and timber and that kind of thing. So, very different from the other John Wick films, but I think stylistically, in terms of some of the lighting and so on, we share the same world. Len has always been a big fan of Hallstatt since the script was developed. He's been looking at this place on Google Earth for about 3 or 4 years. So the big challenge for us is we can't come and shoot here for weeks on end and disrupt the community. We have to sort of make a jigsaw and create our own jigsaw that makes it feel like we're in Hallstatt, but we're actually shooting in Prague or through the Czech Republic. So that's the big challenge for a film like this on this kind of budget, is like finding all those locations. We harassed the location department, we scoured the whole of the Czech Republic, and then it's a case of putting all the photos on the table and putting that jigsaw together, seeing what is going to work best together, how we augment those locations and make it feel like a cohesive world. Well, one of the benefits of this film is we get to flesh out John Wick 3, Anjelica Huston's, the director's world. What's behind the scenes, like where do they live, how do they live, what goes on there, this shooting range, what's their dormitory like. So it was good for us to be able to flesh that out and tell that story.
I had a general meeting with Shay, who was a huge fan of the Wick franchise, and he wrote Ballerina on spec, and it was a very different story than it is now. It was about still the core idea of a female assassin, and we bought the script, Lionsgate bought the script, and then we kind of worked backwards on how we were going to make it more Wick. Ballerina was always, the big idea of this town of assassins. We loved that sort of world-building aspect of it, and what could that look like? When we meet Eve, her father's been killed in this attack, and then she is immediately an orphan and sent to the school for the Ruska Roma, where she learns ballet and becomes trained to be an assassin, and then finds some clues that kind of lead her to uncover the mystery of what had potentially happened to her father. So she leaves the school and ends up on this journey to Hallstatt to figure out what happened to her father. And along the way, encounters many assassins and perils and has to kind of fight her way out of the town to survive. Eastern Europe was somewhere we hadn't really explored in the Wick franchise, so that was a really exciting setting for us. And then working backwards, snow, what kind of action could we do in the snow? What kind of vehicles would there be? What kind of bad guys? So it sort of dovetailed from there. We did meet with a lot of directors, and we did hear a lot of versions of the movie. And Len, who's not someone I had worked with before, came in and really blew us away with his take. First of all, he had become, he knows more about John Wick than I do at this stage. I think he's become such a deep arbiter of the laws of John Wick. He's really immersed himself. So that was like first and foremost. He came in with the great balance of how we could push the action further and bring in interesting set pieces. And he also is, he's really smart and really good with story. And so he had a lot of ideas on how we could build Ana's character, the ballerina character, and really give her her own journey. John Wick is all about John getting out, right? And Ballerina is all about Eve getting in and staying in and rising the ranks of this world. So it's a very different character trajectory. And that was something else we thought was a really interesting POV that Len brought. 8711 sets a tone for kind of the amount of training that an actor and the team undergoes. It's very specific, the way that they choreograph. The teams and who they train with are, have gone through the ringer. A lot of them are, stunt performers turned choreographers. So I think that the way that they train is just different. It just is a really high bar. Like, they don't take a lot of bullshit. So you have to show up, you have to bring your A game. We had always wanted Norman. We're huge Norman Reedus fans. He's friends with Keanu. Len's friends with him as well. Basil and I are just fans. And so he just felt like someone who was sort of, orbits in the John Wick universe. And so we kind of really just only had eyes for him and kind of bent over backwards and changed our schedule about 50 times so it would work with his prior commitments. So it's been really great to have him here. It's funny, we went to Comic-Con with John Wick 4 and The Walking Dead was right in front of us on a panel. So Norman came we were all in the green room together and I was just watching him. I had never met him before, but I was like, he belongs in this world. So it's a huge coup that we have him. The Chancellor's an interesting role because he's created this sort of like mini society cult-like place in the middle of the mountains. And so you need someone that feels like they can really manipulate this whole kind of city. And, he's cold-blooded, right? He's put a hit out on his family members. He's out for it. Gabriel Byrne is also someone that we have been fans of before. I've gone after on other movies and haven't gotten him. And so it's a huge coup. We read it right away. I think it's great casting. I mean, we're really excited for him to come shoot. Before we came to Prague and scouted, we were not going to shoot Prague for Prague. We were going to just make it this, sun and set town. And then we got here, saw how beautiful the city was and really embraced a lot of its Gothic architecture and real places. And so we didn't have to create this fantasy world. We really pushed to go to Hallstatt for a couple days to kind of get that very specific Alpine look. But Phil's been great. I mean, he's been collaborative and interesting and found amazing gems within Prague. And then also a lot of our sets like Stromberg and places that are hour and a half outside of Prague. So it's a lot of stuff that hasn't been shot before, which I'm excited about. In doing Ballerina, there was no version of her not being a part of it. We had to figure out the timeline and how she would sort of, what their relationship would be, because it's like this, she's a mother figure to Ana, but also, they have their own intense relationship. So we always knew that Anjelica would be in this movie, and we just had to figure out exactly how those scenes would exist and how they would play out.